Hello BookTube, and hello AuthorTube. I neglected to do a tag on Tag Tuesday, and so I have a tag for you today that is a writerly tag. Quite a few of us here on BookTube are engaged in writing on a heightened level because of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where the whole world gets together to write 50,000 words of the first draft of a novel in the month of November, 1,667 words a day. I've been watching a huge number of AuthorTube YouTube channels, a huge number of NaNoWriMo videos of one kind or another, and I am also engaged in NaNoWriMo. I'm writing science fiction space opera and having a ball. So I found a writing tag that I saw on Todd the Librarian's channel, a great channel. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. And this tag is the Writer's Book Tag, and it was created by Yankee Southerner Reads, a channel that I didn't know about until I found it through this link. And it's just a series of very basic questions about your relationship with writing. I think anyone on YouTube who does any writing, and keep in mind, I think you all should write, should answer these questions, if not anything else, then for the benefit of all the new people who are finding your channels. Question number one is, what is your favorite genre to write? And right off the bat, we're on complicated ground because there are so many different moving parts involved in writing. My favorite genre to write in terms of the actual act of doing it is probably, oddly enough, ironically enough, fiction. I love writing action scenes. I love writing dialogue. I love doing stuff like that. And so once I've set up the structure for a fiction story of some kind or other, then I'm off to the races. Then it's so much fun to do that in a very self-gratifying way. If we talk about other moving parts of writing, other kinds of satisfaction, maybe favorite would be the kind of nonfiction that I write for a living, where there's far less immediate satisfaction in the moment. There's far more drawing blood from a stone that goes on, but the end result can be every bit as satisfying or more so, because more so maybe because the end result sometimes feels less ephemeral. Question number two is, do you prefer to write short stories or novels? I love the I love the almost unspoken implication that what else would you write? Every day I write something that is neither a short story nor a novel. But of the two, again, it depends. I know I'm going to try not to make that my Weasley response to every one of these questions, but a lot of you who are watching this have written things before. I imagine that a lot of you who are watching this have never tried it. The ones who have never tried it, I've said this before on this channel, when it comes to writing, you cannot conceive of the sheer whole body exhilaration of completing a work you have created. A work of fiction or nonfiction, a piece of writing that you have created. You cannot conceive the all-encompassing joy of typing the end. It is a high, the like of which I don't know anywhere else in my life. And that's why it depends. The answer to this question depends, because when you write a short story and everything is falling in place, that wonderful feeling when everything is falling in place, when a short story basically comes to you whole, like Minerva springing from the brow of Jove, like fully formed, where you know exactly what's going to happen and you know just how to do it. Quite often when I am writing a short story, it will come to me like that. I will know within minutes of thinking it, I will know every moving part of it. I will know every payoff, every moment, and it'll just be a question of getting it done. It's one of the reasons why when a story comes to me like that, a short story, usually my composition time is what most short story writers would consider very fast, because there's nothing to do except write it down. And when I get to the end of a story like that comes to me wholly formed, there is that exhilaration that I'm talking about, that exhilaration of having birthed this, of created this thing. But that feeling of exhilaration is much deeper and much more profound when it comes at the end of writing a novel, especially if the novel fights you. Some of them don't. For NaNoWriMo, for instance, I've written 2 novels, or first drafts of novels for NaNoWriMo that didn't fight me at all. That just felt like butter the whole time. They just slid right out of the shipyard and into the water. But plenty of the others have fought. haven't wanted to come together, or I've hit snags or morasses or bogs and had to work my way out of them. And it really does, in situations like that, it really does feel like work, because there's no one around. It's a very solitary activity, and there's no rule book. You just have to sort of hack your way back to smooth sailing. So so the answer depends. Which do I prefer? I love that feeling of exhilaration. And with a short story, especially when it comes to me fully formed, I can get that feeling with minimum exertion and in a very small amount of time. And that feels great. I just have to remind myself, I often wonder if that doesn't explain why some authors just stick to writing short stories. But I have to remind myself every time that happens that all of the payoffs, all of the personal exhilarations that I feel when it comes to a short story are incalculably greater when it comes to a novel. So there isn't really a preference. It's just, if I'm entering a certain month of the year, do I really want a quick pick-me-up? Or do I want to wait and hack and strive and twiddle my thumbs and work towards that payoff when a novel is done, when you land a novel exactly on the X on the landing pad? There's no feeling quite like that. Question number 3 is, who inspired you to write? I'm not 100% sure that inspired would be the right word. It was a very pompous, grating guy who was disdainful of everyone. He had a very minimal amount of writing or editing talent himself. And as is true with many such people, the Dunning-Kruger effect was in full form. And there was a time when he accidentally, he wasn't in any chain of command of mine, but he happened to see a piece of prose of mine, a pre-publication piece of prose of mine, a short thing, a paragraph or two, an op-ed, and came to me totally unsolicited. I virtually never sought out conversation with this jerk. He came to me totally unsolicited and very disdainfully, very drippingly said, it's not bad. You can kind of sort of string together a sentence or two. Kid. He practically said kid. He all but did say kid. You can kind of string together a sentence or two. It infuriated me. Not quite to the point where I was willing to throttle him right there in the newsroom in front of God, Mother, and Country, but it infuriated me right down to my cellular level. I think I said probably for the next 3 weeks, I can do this a hell of a lot better than you can. You sack of crap. And that, I think, counted as inspiration, because what had been a sort of left-handed half commitment before that was then a full-blown thing. It was then, if you are my arbiter, then then to hell with that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it much, much better than you could. So does that count as inspiration if it's entirely negative? I don't know if it does or not. Question number 4 is, do you have a writing muse? This is a vexed question for me, especially lately. It's a vexed question for me. For a long time, I told myself that I needed a particular person that I was writing to. Not an audience, much though I love them. My audience is fairly big when you count together all the organs and all the countries. But a specific person. I needed a specific person that I was writing to. Forever and ever I told myself that. And forever and ever I had 2 such people. That whenever I sat down to type anything, that's who I was writing for. And I came to the point where I told myself that I needed that. And that I couldn't do without it. And then, sure enough, the minute you even have the nerve to think such a thing, fate will make sure that you learn whether or not you can. So almost as soon as I got comfortable saying that, I lost both those people. Not to death. They both lived. But one was a deeply personal falling out. I suddenly learned that this person had deeply contemptuous opinions of me that I had no idea. They had been carefully hidden from me. Obviously, you're not going to write for such a person anymore. And the other person became a colleague. And you couldn't do that either. Then it felt like shop talk. Then it didn't feel like writing for someone. So all of a sudden, I realized this just a few years ago. I realized suddenly that I don't have anyone that I'm writing for. And yet I'm still writing. More so than ever. So maybe I didn't need a muse of any kind, if that's what this question means by a muse. The only other example the only other reading of it that I can come up with is, what keeps you writing? Is there a person who keeps you writing? And there isn't. The closest thing that would come to that idea of this question would be my dogs. I'm always writing in the company of dogs. But even that hasn't been for sure. Even that hasn't been constant over the years. There's always a period in the arc of having any dog. There's always a period when the clock is past 1, but it's not at evening yet. And your dogs, or in this case, one dog, I have one dog now, but I've mostly had many dogs, great crowds of dogs, and they were always about the same age. And there comes a point in that arc every single time, over and over again, where at some point the dogs are old but not sick, and they just want to sleep all day long. So on circumstances like that, I have gone and written at libraries, never at coffee shops. I actually have a Starbucks gift card that's all loaded up. Somebody gave me to try out writing at a coffee shop, then the pandemic hit, so I don't know that I'll ever use that. But at libraries, absolutely. Even bookstores. And enjoyed it when there was no dog around. So maybe I don't have a muse in that sense. And maybe I don't need one in the other sense. It's kind of weird. I devoted a lot of thought in my journal and in emails to other people. I devoted a lot of thought a few years ago to the fact that I don't write to anybody anymore. I don't write pieces for a particular person anymore. That's kind of strange. So no, I'm guessing that the answer to this question, amazingly enough, is no, I don't have a muse. Then question number 5, do you NaNoWriMo, or are you going to? And NaNoWriMo, as I mentioned, is National Novel Writing Month. It happens every November, and I wouldn't miss it for all the mud in Egypt. I most certainly NaNoWriMo every year, no matter what. It takes moving around of commitments, definitely. Because it happens in November. November is a pressed month anyway. Plus, no one anticipated a pandemic, so everyone's life is in turmoil, even more so than usual in 2020. But I wouldn't miss it. I absolutely love the communal feeling of it. I love the event feeling of it. So yeah, I NaNoWriMo. I am doing NaNoWriMo this year. I'm doing science fiction space opera. Question number 6, do you like live write-ins? I just saw a video from Cam at Page Nomad, in which he talks about the fact that he is enjoying 2020's NaNoWriMo more than he has in years, mainly because he's enhancing the communal aspect of it with write-ins, among other things. That he's doing write-ins where you basically get together virtually, because there isn't a whole lot of a future in NaNoWriMo in-person hangouts. You get together virtually, like, for instance, he has a BookTube channel or YouTube channel, and once you've got a crowd, you say, all right, for the next 2 minutes or whatever, we're all going to write. There's not going to be any talking, not going to be any chatter or comments or response to comments on this channel. Instead, it's going to be just live writing. So, go away, keep the window of this video open, go away and write, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Those are live write-ins. And I was thrilled to hear that they have been making a difference in his enjoyment of NaNoWriMo. He mentioned in that video, I think it just came out today, he mentioned in that video that he is a little behind in his word count, which is deadly. That is deadly for NaNoWriMo. If you get behind, urban legends notwithstanding, you are not going to catch up. Again, you must not miss your 1,667 words a day. But that's also not important. The important thing is that you enjoy it, and that you're writing stuff that you like, and enjoying the whole aspect of writing in your life. And you could see it on Cam's face that is definitely true, that these live write-ins are helping. I myself have never liked them at all. I've been watching videos when quite a few of them happen, and what happens then? I'm watching the video, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at everybody's bald spots while they dip their noses into their keyboards and write. I think the main problem for me is that they're meant for a different kind of writer than I am. I don't have any problem with generating words. I don't have any problem with self-discipline at all. I don't require being in a mood, or the right mood, or inspired in any way in order to write. If I set myself a goal, then I just do it. So I maybe that means I'm out of reach of the communal aspect that's helping everybody, and maybe it means that since I don't need to do that in order to get the words written, then maybe when it comes time for a live write-in, what I really want is to hear people talking about their writings, and I'm not getting that. But one way or another, they seem to be on a parallel and untouching wavelength for me. They don't do anything for me at all. Question number 7 is, do you write first draft on paper or on computer? I write on computer. Everything on computer. First drafts, notes, finished drafts, all of it. I write everything on computer. I think it would be scornful on my part not to do that after all the decades that I spent in my life yearning for the kind of technology that computers actually represent. Of course, 40, 50 years ago, I could yearn for it without knowing what I was yearning for. You know, I didn't know what the technology was, but I knew that something better was possible than the rigmarole of pen and paper or types or TypeScript and correct type and whatnot. I just didn't know what the technology was. Well, now I have the technology. It might not have been what I imagined, but now I have a way to write text in infinite variety with infinite corrections in some sort of quantum superposition where I'm not committing to anything. It's easy to make corrections. It's easy to change drafts. It's easy to move things around in whole blocks without lines everywhere all over a written draft. No, I moved completely over to computer screens, whether it's a flat computer screen or a laptop or whatnot. And I realized this really pointedly last year when I was looking through a whole pile of miscellaneous stuff that had just accumulated in one corner of Hyde Cottage here, and realized that one of the things that had accumulated in that corner was a hip-high pile of paper that I had just been pack-ratting away. Oh, it's perfectly good paper. It's blank paper. It's lined paper. I should be keeping this. It's a pile of paper. You always need paper. And I looked at that pile of paper when I encountered it. It wasn't years ago, actually. It was this year. I looked at that pile of paper and thought, when is the last time that you wrote anything on paper, aside from your journal? When's the last time you wrote anything on a loose sheet of paper? And I couldn't remember. I stood there looking at this pile of paper and thought, okay, when's the last time you used paper? And I couldn't remember. So I boxed up that paper and threw it away. I just got rid of it. I put it in recycling. Who knows how long some of the chunks, the strata of that pile had been there. But no, that was me realizing that I write, I compose, I do everything, even thinking I do on a screen that is connected and communicates with all other screens. I don't do any isolated work anymore, except for my journal, but that's not work. But in terms of writing, where there's going to be an audience, if you write on a paper, you're going to have to either redo your work by typing it, or you're going to have to redo it in order to send it to somebody. So it seems to me to be wasted. I know that there's a synergy there. There's a personal nature, or sort of a tactile nature that a lot of writers really value. It seems really to work for them. I thought once upon a time that I was one of those kinds of writers, but I am definitely not. So for me, it's all computer. And then question number 8 is the final question. Are you a pantser, a plotter, or a plantser? And those are NaNoWriMo terms. Plotting, self-evident, means that you take the month of October, or maybe even longer than that, to plot and plan out your novel, so that when the time comes for you to be writing 1,667 words a day in November, you're not doing anything else. There's no drag on the hull. Instead, you're just doing the writing. The one thing you can't do before the stroke of midnight on the 1st of November. And pantsing is the exact opposite of that, where you don't plan at all, where you don't have any idea what you're going to write on the 1st of November. You just wing it for the entire month. And plantsing is the middle road, where you have a vague idea and you hatch it out as you go along. And I was a plotter for NaNoWriMo for 7-8 years, something like that. And I fully planned on being a plotter this year as well, but all of my plots fell apart. All of my plots failed to inspire me. They failed to make me think that I could get through the whole month writing that. So at the suggestion of a few of you, I decided to plants for NaNoWriMo, the first time ever. I'm doing that this year, where I started with a germ of an idea, a germ of a few characters, and a kind of sort of idea of what might maybe happen. And that was it. That would once upon a time have been scandalous for me. But instead, I am having a ball. I'm having a ball doing it that way. It's playtime. Every day when I sit down, every morning when I sit down to do my word count, it's playtime. In a way that definitely, I've enjoyed NaNoWriMo. Every single time I've done it, I've enjoyed the heck out of it. But it has never felt quite like this before. I honestly don't think, maybe there's a nightmare coming to me in the 3rd week of NaNoWriMo. Maybe there is. But if it continues to feel like this, I honestly don't think I'm going to sweat plotting ever again for NaNoWriMo. I honestly don't. if this continues to feel this thrilling, this much fun, all the way to the end of NaNoWriMo, and I actually do finish a work, and what I've done so far is not wild and unstructured at all. I'm building the structure as I go. That's what planting is. If it ends up feeling this way all the way to the end, I think I will just plant NaNoWriMo from now on. And maybe learn a lot about writing in the process. I honestly feel like I am, in the course of this NaNoWriMo, learning a lot about writing, and not just about planting. I honestly feel like I'm learning a lot. So that's great. That's fantastic. So I'm going to continue to do that. And that is the writer's book tag. Very good, basic meat and potatoes questions that I like a lot. I don't know who to tag here because I don't know who's done this tag, but I want all of you who are writing at all, like James Holder, I know you're writing. Brian at Bookish, you're not doing NaNoWriMo, but you are writing. Anybody who's writing, I'd love to hear the answers to these questions. It might be that in the course of watching your videos, day after day, stray comments here and there, I could probably cobble together the answers, but it'd be great to have them all in one place. So, those of you who are out there writing, Mark Richardson, I believe, is doing NaNoWriMo in his freezing cold study, because that old house needs lots and lots of work. The little room that he colonized for himself, a perfect idea. You really need it. If you can, you really need just a book-saturated little room where you can go. I mean, Chaucer writes about that. Dante writes about that, about having that room and that room being important. But to do it in a room that has no heating, that's a very Vermont decision. Any of you who write, I would love to hear the answers to these questions. And I will leave a link to Todd the Librarian, a wise man. You should all subscribe to his channel. And also Yankee Southerner Reads. I'll leave a link to those down below. And if I remember, I might not, because I'm terrible at this. I will also leave a link to Cam's video, where he talks about how wonderful NaNoWriMo has felt for him this year. It's a typically wonderful video on his part as well. But anyway, that's your tag for today. And I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.